Hello there, and welcome once again to my little arty corner on YouTube. My name's Angela Porter, and as well as being a colouring book illustrator, known for the Colour Me Calm and Colour Me Happy, and just basically the Colour Me series with Lacey Mucklow, an art therapist. I've done many other colouring books for different publishers, including Creative Haven series by Dover. And in a previous lifetime, previous part of my life, I've been a science teacher for 28 years. And so a love of nature, a love of observation of things, and a love of drawing in a simplified manner, which is what you do scientifically kind of when you're making observations, has followed me through my life really. But it's only in the last about 20 years I've actually developed any artistic ability that I may have. And my mission here on YouTube, I think, is to encourage you to draw just for pleasure in a sketchbook where nobody has to see what you produce, where you can practice and do things again and again and again, improving all the time, because that's what it is. Nobody came out of the womb ever being able to draw like a photograph. No one. Even the most skilled artists have spent years and years and years of drawing, painting, and so on. So it's a fact. So with no further ado, let's go to this. In front of you, you can see the sketchbook page that I'm working on. It's actually a little bit smaller than A5 in size because I want to glue it into my sketchbook. I do this quite often. You don't have to stick just to sketchbook pages. You can use any kind of paper or medium that you like to work on, but make sure, if you're keeping a sketchbook, keep the size of that paper to a piece that will fit a page. It can be much smaller than the page. If you're happy to fold it, it can even be bigger. If you want to cut it in two, you can spread it over 2 pages. Sketchbook doesn't have to be perfect. And I choose sometimes to use different paper because the sketchbook I'm working in or using at the moment for all of this has paper that is okay for dry media, copes with a little damp brush, but really is useless with alcohol markers, which is what I want to work with for this particular project. Sometimes I feel I do better with alcohol markers than I do with other traditional media. So there we go. So we're drawing oyster shells. And of course, part of my mission is to help you learn how to do these things one little step at a time. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to start with the outline of an oyster shell of the shape I'd like it to be. So it's going to be quite narrow at the top and more bulbous towards the bottom. I've actually got, I picked up the wrong pen here. I didn't want to use that one for this. The one I'd picked up was a Kuretake Zig Mangaka flexible. That'll show up because it's there. It's lovely. I've been using it for lettering, but the nib is just a tad more flexible than I want here. Let me have a look. I think this is a brand new one of these as well. No, that one's not. I don't think. Could be. So hard to know sometimes. What's the one I'm looking for? That'll do. This is the Tombow for Denisuke I've been using for all the other drawings. It's the more flexible version, but because I'm not flexing it very much, then I'm getting to the point of keeping it fairly narrow and being able to get some thickness of line. So I want to start up here towards the tip, but not exactly there, and I'm going to draw the first part of this oyster shell. Then I want to start to add some pattern. So here I've just put 2 lobes around it, but this will develop as we go forward, like so, adding another one. And then I'm going to start adding ones that start to go around and connect back. And what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to create a kind of diva dance kind of thing going on here. Diva dance is one of my favourite Zentangle patterns, and it's really got, I'm looking for a piece of paper I can use to draw on to show you. There we go, I've got a piece of paper here. Oops, not that piece, this piece will do. And diva dance is essentially, you get a wiggly line and you go back, create humps and lumps, fill them in with black, and then aura this, and again you add the lumps and bumps and carry on doing this. It's incredibly versatile. I'm doing it here in a straight line, but you can do it in a circular form. I'm just starting to create something that's circular here. I've never done anything like this with diva dance where I'm launching part off another one. Actually, it could be quite an interesting variation. We have little swirls coming up and then these parts just connecting back to create that little lump. But it will work really nicely in sort of circular or curved motifs like that. So that's quite fun. So essentially this is what we're going to be doing here, but I'm not putting the aura lines all that closely together, and I am making these all plenty of, you know, sort of like waves in them, because oyster shells aren't exactly the smoothest things in the world. But these also give me that opportunity to pop aura lines to create these little sections that look a little bit like diva dance. I say a little bit because it is only a little bit. The inspiration is there. It reminds me of diva dance as I draw this. And I actually have drawn these in my sketchbook. And as I did so, I thought the pencil line might be a useful guide for getting the shape of the shell as you'd like it. Because I've noticed that I can get a bit random with how I allow shells to grow when I'm doing this. And I end up with shells that don't really look like the shape of an oyster shell, or an archetypal oyster shell, I suppose. If there is such a thing, I'm sure there is, depending on the particular species of oyster, no doubt. So pop another one in there. Perhaps we'll have one here just to fill a bit of that in. This one, this area here is quite large, so I think I may have just another part of a section there. And that's our oyster shell for today. I do like it. I'm not going to fill these in with black, I don't think, because I think that would, I do love the graphic nature of black, mind you. Let me give it a go and I'll see what it looks like. And if the worst comes to the worst, it's not going to take me too long to draw another one. But I can, and I'm using this as an opportunity to put areas, or to think about which areas I fill in with black. Like if I'd filled this one in with black, it would have created a rather large black area, and perhaps I'll just pop a little bit in the inside there. And I really don't want to create black areas that overlap, so it's going to be interesting in some of these places where I've put these shapes. But you can make adjustments as you go. It's like here, I think I'd rather like a bit of a border there around that one and perhaps around this one, and there's nothing to say we can't do that. You adapt and change what you're doing, or adapt what you're doing to the particular needs of what you're doing, really. Now here, this was one of those places where I had 3 of these all stacked together, so I've chosen to fill that middle one. And I think that works quite nicely as it is. Where my pen's making a bit of a mess of things because, well, it's relatively early in the morning. Well, it's 9:30. So that's relatively early these days for me creating a video. You see, I'm making adjustments to the shapes as I go, so that I just get the feeling that it will look or feel like anything, but so it feels, I like the shapes more. I'm not quite sure how else I can say that, is that I have shapes here that are pleasing to me. And although I might make these areas bigger than I started with, I'm fine with that. And here, what I'm going to do here is add a section there. I've got a little shape here and I can just perhaps pop a little bit of black in there. That's given me the idea for these sections where I can perhaps selectively thicken that line there and this one here. Quite like that. Having a look at where else I can do that. Here I can most probably have this one bumping out a little bit because I've got a large area there. And perhaps this one can a little bit on the edge on the side. I'm just tidying my lines up as I go. That one I made a bit thicker than I wanted it to be. This is rather a large area compared to the others, but I think I can do something about that. I need to just tidy this up a bit. Excuse me. Glad to report that the tree allergy season seems to have come to an end. I'm not having so much trouble with those symptoms, which is great. I think that'll be quite nice, and perhaps just one here. Just looking until I've got everything balanced enough for me to feel comfortable about it. I think here it's just a question of perhaps just putting a line in. That feels better. That then means that I may need to do that in other areas. And I run the risk here of getting too fussy in what I have, which is fine. You know, say it's sketchbook work. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be good enough. Just good enough for us to like, I suppose. Okay, while the ink's drying there, I'm going to draw another oyster shell, and this time I'm going to draw the outside shape that I want again. And it's really quite random, the shape. And I'm going to start towards the top here, and we're going to just do some rings around. And this one will be a little bit different to the ones we've already done. At the top, it will, honestly. I'm not trying to create thicker lines, although my lines will vary slightly in thickness as I draw because I'm using a flexible nib pen. But I do want to get this rounded edge like that, and I am going to put something that's a bit like a lip around this side, and then I'm just going to use some lines to add some texture and shape. So I'm just adding areas of lines, not inside each of the areas I've drawn, but perhaps this one and then the outermost one. Just to connect them and add this, perhaps feeling that they are not flat, but there is some curvature or shape and form to them. So I'm not trying to keep the lines perfectly curved or shaped, in places anyway, just to give that feeling that these might be sort of unevenly formed, because they do have a roughness, don't they? So that's what I'm trying to do here, is add some of that roughness in, even though I've drawn fairly straight lines in places. And I could just thicken some lines to help with that sense of volume. And I'm not doing this a perfect copy, I want it to be imperfect, as in thinner and thicker along this line. Not to the extent of, say, Diva Dance, but perhaps to suggest an unevenness in the texture of the shell as well. This is the hardest thing I find when I'm drawing from observation, is to work out what is essential and what I can leave out. It's narrowing down what is characteristic, what helps you to identify that something is this particular thing rather than something else. And I can find that very difficult because I try to draw everything I see. So being able to work in a very stylized way is very good for me because it helps me narrow down those stylistic patterns. But it's also something that I do quite well. Whereas I know that if I try to draw what I'm looking at, everything becomes overwhelmed with detail until eventually it looks all the same, as it were. So, you know, it's that idea of it's the scientific endeavour. I've got some coffee here. Yeah, coffee, if you can call it that. Most people would turn their nose up at it because it's more milk. Like, it's more milky-y. It's sort of like it's watery milk with a dash of coffee in for flavour. I'm actually really enjoying it. Okie dokes. So there we have 2 oyster shells drawn. Now, before I add alcohol inks or alcohol markers, I am going to just erase the pencil lines. That'll also pick up any loose pigment that hasn't dried yet, hopefully, without smearing it. So I'm less likely to have things picked up by the alcohol marker. It's a kneadable eraser, so it's soft and putty-like, and you can mould its shape. No dust. No dust, which is what I want. No bits of stuff everywhere that ends up all over the place. Okie dokes, I'm using the same kinds of colours as I have before. So I've got a couple of warm greys. I've got my colourless blender. I've got some peachy pinks. I've got 3 different peachy pinks here. And I've also got a mauve or a, purpley colour. I haven't put the autofocus on, I do apologise. I got lost in other things today. My mind is a bit all over the place for whatever reason. So let's start off with the warm greys and put the shadows in before we do anything else. Didn't think I was going to get the lid off then. What is going on? So I'm trying to think how these would layer over each other, and I'm going to put shadows under these layers, these areas, just to, and perhaps a bit more shadow towards the edges where they would be naturally in more shadow as well. So this is the lightest colour. With alcohol markers, the colours do dry much lighter than you put them down, or noticeably lighter. It's the scary thing about them is that it's hard to tell exactly how something will look to begin with. You think, oh, I do this all the time. I think, oh, why did I choose these colours? It's way too dark. And then suddenly everything dries and you think, oh, that's not so bad then. And what you see is, sort of like messy blends and edges and so on. As they dry, those fade as well. So it's working with the medium and becoming familiar with it and learning to trust your process, and also finding out the way that things work for you. I vary what I do and how I add colour. I often add colour like I am here, light to dark, and then back from dark to light again, because that process helps with blending colours in. But sometimes I will start with the darkest colours, as in, oh, that's a colourless blender. Don't want that one, do want this one. And put areas of dark in, the shadows in, like I'm doing here really. But and then working towards the lighter colours. I'm putting the shadows in before I add colour. It's easier to see where they need to go, and it also then informs where I put the different colours. And while I'm doing that, I can be using, oh gosh, I'm weakling today, this, because I'm extending where the darker shadows are as I'm putting this down. So if I use the lighter colour alcohol marker while these inks are dry, still wet, they'll blend that little bit better, which is what I want. And I can adjust then as well how far the shadows appear to spread. I'm going to add some more alcohol ink there, the lighter brown grey, warm grey even. I suppose it is a brown grey. With these, don't be afraid to go over the black areas with the alcohol markers to help stay in small spaces. If you've got black areas to work within, that you won't notice the alcohol marker over them at all, which is rather useful. Yeah. Let's get the lighter colour while I'm at it, and just pop this round. This is really quick colouring. I could fuss around an awful lot more, but I know that if I spend too long fussing, that's when everything tends to go to pot. And that's why I struggle with watercolours so much, perhaps, is not just the difficulty I have in getting the intensity of colour. It's either so intense you can't really tell what the colour is, or it's so relatively pale it seems to look intense. but as it dries back a lot lighter. Same kind of issue as with alcohol markers, but for some reason I just find alcohol markers easy to work with. Perhaps it's because they're more controllable, more predictable. There. So that's all the warm grey down. Now that could stay exactly as it is and it would work, but I want peachy colours. So I have got here, I've got, this is called powder pink. These are Ohuhu art markers, they're the brush versions. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to give all of this a glaze of this peachy colour. So glaze is just putting the colour right over the top. And with alcohol markers, the colours are all transparent. They mix and they will spread one into another while they're wet. But because I'm covering everything with this colour, any blending or bleaching will be pretty consistent across the whole of the shell. Because lighter colours can bleach out darker colours when you put them on the top, which is useful if you've got a darker colour you want to lighten up. It's a bit too dark for your needs. Or so I've found. I'm sure that's not the official way of doing things, but I'm not one for official ways of doing things really. Now I have let some alcohol markers spill out here to the edge, over the edge. I could correct that with gel pens later on, but I'm just going to use a colourless blender which will essentially bleach those out. And I can use that for areas where I'd like perhaps a little bit of highlight, which is along some of these edges, because they're sticking out a little bit more and perhaps will catch the light a bit more. It does take a little while for this to show up, but you might see that it's beginning to work already. Okay, next colour, I have a fruit pink here. It's another R number, a red, but one of the paler reds, so let's have a look. So for this one I just want to use this where the shadows are really. It's adding that variation in colour and tone again. And the warm greys will show through, and they do darken and dull these colours down, because some of them are really in your face pink. I'm not being very fussy with these and how I put them down. I'm just thinking about where I'd like this colour to go. I want to leave patches of lighter peachy pink where they are, and to help with blending I'll just go back and add some of the lighter peachy pink. In the places where I've bleached, that's okay, I can live with a little bit more colour in them. So if I add too much I can go back and bleach things again. It's not an issue or a problem at all. I do have a darker pink here. This is Pastel Rose it's called. Again, it's Ohuhu, so it's slightly darker than the ones I've already used, so I'm just going to pop some of that in where the colours would be darkest perhaps. Just to, again, it's to add that contrast. Oh, I went out the lines there. Thank goodness for colourless blender and white gel pens. And again there. Perhaps going a bit too quickly. As I keep saying, there's very little that can't be fixed, which makes me quite happy when it comes to things like this. Okay, I'm going to go back with this peachy colour just to blend this one in. Rather than the lightest peach colour, I'll use the medium shade here. I tend to use 3 colours where I can. a light, medium and dark. Sometimes it's not possible because there just isn't a colour in between. So then it's working on blending them or finding a slightly different colour that would work. Or the grey, as I've done here. So again, it's just coming back with this, just helping everything to blend. And then taking a look to see how it looks overall. And I'm going over the places that I've bleached it because they're standing out just a little bit too much. I'll go back over them in a moment. So I need that colourless blender because I've seriously gone outside lines here. There. This is like magic, it will move them. And then I am going to, right along the edges of some of these, just run some of the colours blender along the edge, just to give a little bit of a highlight. Just a bit of a highlight. That was cleaning up a bit of colour. So I've got that, so I'm having a look now. Take my glasses off so I can see from a distance. That's looking quite nice, but I really like that lavender I added here yesterday. So I think I'm going to add some of this lavender while this is still damp, hopefully, to the areas where I really want shadowing going on. So I think that works really nicely with these peachy pinky colours. I could be wrong, but then it's personal preference. And don't forget, I've yet to finish adding pattern or texture to this. So bottom here, that's really quite an intense shadow, that madding in. I think it adds that lovely variation in tone as well, adding that cooler colour. Again, I missed a bit over here. It's always best to catch them when the alcohol ink is wet. If you do that, some areas I've spilled out, but it's barely noticeable. It's me being fussy. Me noticing every single detail. So that looks okay. I like this, but I'm going to add some texture to some of these areas, I think. This one, I think, yep, this is no 1 micron. So I'm going to go to this particular area here, and I think I'm going to fill it with, I'm not doing perks in the sense of tucking them behind, but I am putting squashed circles in just to add texture. And if there's a little gap there, I will go back and use my pen just to fill it in. So I think things like this just make a little difference, they add interest. And it's also that personalisation. Just think it's just nice to be able to do here. This one is an arched kind of shape. It's begging for little arches inside it. Again, it's a favourite pattern I use to fill spaces. Feel free to use your own. That's actually really quite nice there. That just suits that shape, to my mind, perfectly. These ones here could definitely do with some infill, and I think I will do these perk style, because I can then look back and see the difference that makes. And I think here I'll even add tiny perks in. And if I have to fill some of that in, that's fine. That works quite nicely because I've got a big area of black here now, but I've got these little shapes in it. I quite like that. Okay, so for this one here, shall I do something on that one? I think so. I think I'll go back to doing these little arches or little petal shapes, because I just love, I don't know what it is, I think it reflects my love of Romanesque architecture really. So I've popped it on that side, so now I need to repeat this here. Like so. And then this little bit here is calling out for something. My problem is knowing when to stop, because I will fill every available space with pattern or something else given the opportunity. I think I'll just pop some perks in there. And then I think this section up here I might like to fill with something. I'm going to stick to either circles or arches, and I think here, I think I'll do the circles again, or perks. There we go. Then I'm just looking down around here. I'm thinking, do I need something here, or can I live with this as it is? I do think I might need something somewhere. And what I think I'll do is I'm going to add in a line like this. So I've got these two spaces here and here, and I know full well what's going in them, because these are the kinds of spaces that perk tends to look fab in. You get that one area where you can put one big perk, and then the smaller ones get tucked behind each other as you go towards as each corner, and so it gives you that feeling that something's trying to bulge out. And I can do the same here. So I'll start with one there. Any little spaces that perhaps too small for a perk, I'm just going to fill in with that hint of black. See if we've got an open space behind there. That actually makes me quite happy and smile. So the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this one. Tomorrow's Saturday, so perhaps tomorrow I'll finish the sketchbook page off with you, because I've got some space over here perhaps for another one, or maybe another two, and probably two, because I've got a couple of ideas that I might like to try. So what I've got here is a good old gel pen. Got some paper here, I can use a scrap just to get it working. And here, I'm going to use this to put highlights along the edges of some of these shells. You know where I bleached colour out? So I'm not going right the way along the edge. What I'm doing is I'm putting one dot that's quite big in the middle and getting smaller to either side. So it's just like there's a little area here that is just catching that light. And again, it adds interest. So rather than having all of the edge highlighted. We've just got bits and pieces of it. And it draws attention, I think, to the shape of these lines far more. Or these, perhaps the shape of the shell, the form and function of it here. There are areas here where I can't change the shape or the size of these too much, so I am just putting in small dots. Like so. Okay, here I'm going to pop dots in the middle, but they're going to be so much bigger that that'll be fine. Pop some, the top of this little black line I drew inside these. Here I'm going to put them towards the top of these perks. I will come and add little dots in these towards the top where I can, otherwise just in the areas. The white will help to bring these out. This one I'm going to put them in the middle, give those a different feel as if they are arched. This one, again, it's going to be towards the end of the lines or just above those lines. And be right here now. The other thing I'm going to do is, I've got these big areas of black and this is just black. I think that I'm going to pop white along those black areas, because the white will really stand out, but it will add interest, so we just haven't got that stark blackness. And I think that will look quite nice. I think I said that already. I'm losing the plot slowly. Fab. It adds a bit of almost glitter or glimmer here without using glitter or glimmer. Just checking. Just perhaps a couple there, a couple there. And I think that may be done. The only thing I think I'd like to do is I think I'll use the mauve colour, because I could do with just popping some shadows at the bottoms of these areas, only where I can get this pen in really. Brush pens are far better for adding details like this. I think that's as far as I can go, but I just thought these little perks might actually benefit from some shadows at the bottom. These ones as well, because they're big enough that I can get in there. And perhaps if I go and use my, oops, wrong end. Let's try that one. This is the mid colour of the alcohol markers, and then perhaps the lighter colour just to spread that up a little bit. So I've got shadow at the top but not in the middle, so I think that'll work. And there we are. So what do you think? Page is coming along. As I said, tomorrow I'll add colour to this. 2 more drawings to go there, possibly with colour. I'll see how I feel. But I hope that you were able to follow that and draw this one. It's a kind of a warped kind of diva dance. I used to draw it, Zentangle pattern, in a strange way. But I think it's worked out quite nicely. I tell you what, that was glaring out to me now. So just add some lines, just a bit of white there and here, just so they tie in with everywhere else. I think that works now. That's a bit better. It was a strange shape and it didn't look quite right, so there we are. It's not until you step back sometimes you see these things, so don't ever think, if you're not sure about something, just take a few steps back, put it to one side for an hour a day, 2 days, come back to it and see what you can do, what looks wrong and what you can do to improve it. I've got quite a lot of black here, so I also perhaps could pop some in there and perhaps some there. That's a bit better. So all I can see is the Oogie Boogie Man. Nightmare Before Christmas. It's the eyes here. These look like eyes and a grumbly mouth. Another mouth underneath, which is a bit bizarre. But yeah, that's all I've got in my head. So I'm going to go and have my coffee and lie down in a dark room for 10 minutes and get rid of the fact this looks like the Oogie Boogie Man. Right. Have fun. Enjoy drawing these. If you do share on social media, I'd love to see, so tag me in it. Usually you can tag me as either at Angela Porter or usually it's at Artword. It varies from platform to platform. If you're not comfortable sharing on social media but you'd like me to see, then by all means find me on one of the platforms I'm on and send me a direct message, private message me, so that only I can see it, and I'd love to see. So take care of yourselves, enjoy creating, and find that time to be creative. So for now, ta-ta, hwyl fawr, bye.